Hey everyone, so I had a interesting conversation today with someone about movement and all these different things that affects it, and ultimately how to improvement and what movements are good and bad, and all this different stuff. And while the individual was looking for a very simple response, and unfortunately when it comes to exercise and movements and all these different variables, it's not always a black and white response, and overlooking all these different things that affect movement can certainly be detrimental to our health, our progress, our safety, injuries, all this kind of stuff. So in this case, talking about these wide variety of exercises that may or may not be conducive to our health and our goals and everything like that, we need to understand what affects it. And kind of what started this conversation was bone structure. And bone structure is unique to each individual. So while one movement may be appropriate for one person, the same movement may not be appropriate for another individual, and that could be just because of the bone structure. In this case, if we talk about a squat, let's say, if a big joint you want to consider is the hip joint. And if, to keep it simple though, if the ball and socket joint, where that femur or that leg meets the hip, if that opening isn't wide enough, then that's going to affect how an individual would be able to, or how low an individual would be able to sit into that squat. Of course, before some compromise would happen in the body. And that could be, in this case, a lot of times with deep squatting, it could be through the lower back, where the lower back starts to round, the butt kind of tucks underneath you, and ultimately lower back issues can start to happen. But that widening of that, we'll just say that ball and socket joint, if an individual has a bigger space than another individual, and that's just simply because of the bone structure, there's not much that can be done for that individual. We just have to understand that limitation and just that bone structure, and understand that a deep squat may not be conducive for that individual, simply because that if they go any lower, it's going to destroy their back, most likely. So bone structure and movement, or movement's going to play a big role, or is going to be dictated by bone structure. And if we don't really understand that or appreciate that, we may overlook that and ultimately get hurt or injured. So, and then this ended up becoming a discussion on learning movement and what that consists of. So if we want to improve movement, we have to understand what affects it, and then what our limitations are. So if we are learning a new movement, it takes time for our body to become efficient at that, especially if we have any type of injuries or muscles that are underactive or anything like that. So understanding our bone structure, but along with other things, is going to play a big role in how well we improve our movement. So movement is a deliberate thought process that ultimately takes steps into learning. We can't just, if we're learning how to improve our bench press, or if we're learning how to get a better squat or deadlift or anything else, it starts with a conscious thought and a conscious effort. And if we don't have those conscious thoughts and effort every single time we are performing a new movement, or any movement for that matter, it's probably going to end up resulting in a in a bad ending. And no matter how advanced that you are, that your checklist or your setup may become quicker. You may not have to prep yourself up so much, but especially in this day and age where there's a lot of sitting, there's a lot of driving, there's a lot of sitting around or anything like that, our joints become stiff, muscles become underactive, compensations start to occur, a lot of different things start to happen just through daily living. So if we look at movement as a way to overcome those compensations, then we have to deliberately think and make an effort to overcome these issues. So movement, there's a lot of different things that dictate movement and that play a role in improving it. And in this conversation, we talked about bone structure and how that affects it. But movement in general, especially when we're in the gym and we're training and everything like that, it takes a conscious effort and a thought out idea on what we want to execute and what we want to engage in order to improve ourselves. So I thought it was an insightful conversation. It seemed to have helped the individual I was talking to, and so I thought I would share it with you, and I hope this kind of helps you, gives you a little different idea on how to approach movement and how to kind of think about your exercises a little bit differently. But if you want to talk more about it, or if you have any other questions, just let me know, and we'll talk to you about them.